Hello, and welcome to another episode of That One Time podcast, where I explore stories of interesting people doing cool things under the pillars of health, wealth, and wisdom. I'm your coach. I'm your host, Adam Metwally. Today we have Ryan Carter, aka Live Vitae, a leading health and nutrition coach from London, currently living in Nicaragua. Ryan's amassed a following of over 400,000 on his Instagram and provides excellent insight into living an optimal life through nutrition and exercise. Our conversation was wide-ranging. We talked about health, sunscreen, mindset, education, the blue zone, so much stuff, jam-packed with a lot of detailed scientific knowledge that at times went over my head as well. But I think there's some really amazing fundamentals that you can take from this episode, as well as if those who are interested in working remotely and creating a life that is not necessarily the 9 to 5 and off the grid, traveling the world. Ryan has done this and is doing this well. So enjoy. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming. I tell the listeners whereabouts you are at the moment.
Right now, I'm in a sunny coastal town in Nicaragua called San Juan del Sur, so the 11th latitude.
Yeah, nice. What made you pick Nicaragua?
I had no clue about the country maybe a year and a half ago. I stumbled across it when my ex-girlfriend and I were looking for another location to travel to. And we were in Costa Rica at the time, and we just saw Nicaragua, this little spot, San Juan del Sur area. And was like, let's go there. It was like half the price of Costa Rica. And just took the dive in and spent maybe 8 months here last year. Loved the place. It's very grounding and it's very immersed in nature. The country gets a bad rep. And it's unfortunate because essentially none of the stuff is really true about like it being dangerous and just all the stuff that you hear in the news, basically. So again, it's really pure. And sure, there's some like problematic things going on with like Western influence in the population, but it's very grounding. It's so in touch with nature. Even here, it's fairly central, but there's still monkeys coming around into town. There's still an essence of that sort of humanity connection going around where everybody knows each other. So it's just very grounding to be around.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of the core things about life is traveling and exploring. So, it's really nice to be able to go. Is it in Central America? In Central America?
Yeah, Central America. Yeah. So just above Costa Rica, below Guatemala.
Yeah, I'm in the arse end of the world in Australia, so our geography's not that great. We don't have to worry about it. It's just a little island. But yeah,
it's a massive island.
It's a very big island. Yeah, have you been?
Yeah, I think I've been 4 or 5 times. So the West Coast, the whole East Coast, been to Darwin, been to Ayers Rock. So I've been about. I've maybe been to more of Australia than some Australians.
Yeah, I haven't seen that much of Australia, so you probably have. Well, next time you're down, you're welcome to come say hello. So I'm based out of Melbourne. So
yeah, awesome. Yeah, I haven't been to Melbourne.
Melbourne's the spot. Melbourne's like one of the best cities in the world. So yeah, that's good. No, nice, man. Well, look, let's get into it. I just want to understand a little bit about you. So let me understand the context of your early years that help us to understand you as a human.
Yeah, I would say I was a bit of a rebel. So I used to do graffiti. I used to do a bit of drug dealing on the side. And again, I was just coasting in life, essentially. A part-time job, I'd say middle-class background. Didn't think much, didn't take my health into any consideration. Essentially got kicked out of home from 1 or 2 issues and lived by myself. And then my girlfriend moved in at the time. And then essentially started learning about cooking and looking after my body. Then I started working for my dad's antique shop. And this is where essentially a few health issues came up. where my libido started getting drained. I was exercising at a time, but doing it in the wrong way. And essentially was just like doing too much cardio and under eating, essentially. So basically created a sort of disordered eating way of living and became 55 kilos. So for my body, that's literally nearly half my body weight right now. I'm 100 kilos right now. Jesus. So it's fairly underweight.
Yeah.
And again, I just caused it myself from lack of education. Again, loss of connection with friends and family, getting kicked out of home, losing all my friendships in that area, and just spiraled from there, where my health was basically just evaporating. And then I was just searching for answers, essentially online, searching for diets, looking for those gurus. And again, they did point me into certain directions. However, they were just like rabbit holes. They weren't really first principle thinking, or really applying critical appraisal of like what they're suggesting, essentially like the ketogenic diet or a low carb diet or carb refeeds or the way to train or paleo, etc., etc. So again, it was just like a lot of information. And then I had to leave my job at the time, which was working for my dad's antique shop, because it was one of the contributing factors to my poor health, which was mold or mycotoxins. And again, that's slowly just like eating away at your body and your immune system, where you just become reactive to everything. In addition to living in London, which again is very suppressive for your health, if you don't know how to leverage it as well. So again, there was all these things just basically bringing me down. Needed to change my work. And again, that made me think, okay, cool, nutrition is pretty interesting. I'm learning all this stuff about how to feed my body, about food. Let me get involved. So then I started becoming or learning to become a nutritional therapist, got on this course. And then from there, I just like immersed myself into books, into podcasts, started reading studies, and really just like not becoming a specialist or in a niche, which most people adapt to or get into, like the gut guru or the hormonal person or the detox dilemma person, whatever it is. I really wanted to understand everything, essentially. I become a generalist because again, I knew that in conventional medicine, you go to see the endocrinologist, you go to the cardiologist, the ophthalmologist. And again, this is like compartmentalized health. This isn't really how humans thrive in nature, or any other animal thrives in nature. We're basically a whole being. And again, this is the fundamental flaw in most studies, is that they isolate and boil down cause and effect modules and taking things out of the environment. And again, that's not how life works. So again, I wanted to understand the majority of things. Now, obviously, I'm not going to understand everything, and I don't understand everything. But again, it allows me to actually understand, okay, what's that saying? How do the different systems link up? Okay. And again, listen to the right people for the information or for the breadcrumbs. And those people would be allowing me to think and ask questions and dive into the books that they read, instead of me telling me like what to do, like most functional medicine practitioners. Oh, you got a gut issue? Take the GI map stool test. Then you add in the berberine, you add in the oregano oil, then basically go on a low FOD diet, then you retest, and then maybe you get a different test result. And yeah, it's great. However, there's always a relapse involved with these sort of scenarios. Because again, it's not applying first principles of actually what the microbiome is there for.
What is the microbiome there for?
Well, essentially, it's to extract food and to provide a huge amount of hydrogen to the human body. It's also there to produce byproducts. It's also there as a first line defense. It's also there to catch light that we metabolize from food as well.
Wow.
So again, it's all on our surfaces. The microbiome is everywhere. It's not just on our gut. So we have a huge amount of bacteria on our skin, in our nasal cavity, in our lungs, and we're interacting every single day, and they're there to help us. So the microbiome is not really like good or bad. It's just like it's there, and it's essentially the bitch. We are the primordial. We are the advanced organism here bacteria, parasites, worms, viruses, you name it. They're very simple organisms. We're like the most advanced creature. So again, like for them to have the leverage on us just shows you how poor metabolically humans are, or how low their redox is, where they're causing these severe issues to our health. Because no other animal has the insults to bacteria and pathogens like humans do. There's a fundamental issue there, i.e. the barrier, what everyone talks about, the leaky gut. This barrier to the outside world is impaired where it's too permeable. And we're also getting the insults of that, but we're also losing out. We're wasting away all these valuable resources, and we're changing how the information is relayed to us, because it's not about energy per se, extraction from food. It's about the information, because food basically is like a barcode. It's a barcode of information, and we extract it and try to make sense out of it. So again, this is where the disconnect comes in with isolated thinking or compartmentalization of the human body, where you're just thinking about detox. Like you can't think about detox unless you understand about oxygenation. You can't think about detoxification unless you understand light. So there's these enzymes in the human body called CYP450 enzymes, first phase detoxification enzymes. Now that 450 in their name is unique because that 450 is all about blue light, funny enough. So these enzymes only work, well, majority work when they're under the influence of blue light from nature. And
so
again,
not artificial blue light, it doesn't work?
Well, it can work, but the issue is it short fuses the system. Everything works in a feedback loop in the human body. And when you're only under one power of light, you're just turning on and cranking up growth, essentially. And again, this is fundamentally why most teenagers or young adults are basically hitting puberty very early. Why young girls now are getting breasts at the age of like 9 and 10, and they're getting their first period at like 11, which is crazy. And then you see it in like young men who are getting severe acne because their testosterone is so high and it's so free that it's activating and promoting so much growth.
And this is in part because of the blue light, the artificial blue light over stimulation?
100%. And again, like you can actually radiate, again, as I read this study yesterday, essentially, and I'm trying to do a reel about it, but I just need to execute it, where they irradiated bacteria and it grows under the blue light. The radiance of blue light, it's increasing its growth. And again, this is Staphylococcus aureus, which again is pathogenic and one of the species that induces acne, essentially. So when you put your phone or any blue light by your face, you're actually increasing the growth of the bacteria.
Interesting.
Maybe this is why people have acne all of a sudden.
Do you know much about the history of like children, not children, like adolescents and acne? Is that trending in the direction of getting worse?
Well, definitely. So again, the conundrum is people put, or females especially, is they put makeup on their skin. And again, this is reflecting the light. And again, if you think about sun cream, if you think about some food products, what do they contain? Titanium, aluminium, these heavy metals which essentially reflect light. And again, our fats are nutrients that we absorb. They are programmed to interact with sunlight, not partial spectrum light or artificial light. When they don't get programmed from sunlight, they're going to cause a distorted sort of reaction. And again, no one goes out in UV light anymore. And again, UV light is a germicide. It's one of the most potent antimicrobial agents that we have going. So the absence of going outside is basically causing these problems.
It really all ties in a lot together into this holistic element, isn't it? That's the key here. Like it's all a complex system that works together, and one thing hits another. Yeah,
100%. But again, like most people in the functional medicine space, they'd be like, okay, all your skin issues arise from H. pylori or some bacterial overgrowth. Who's to say that actually no? It's the opposite. It's actually induced from the eyes and the skin on the outside first. And this is what creates the gut issues. And again, if you actually understand physiology, the gut requires a massive amount of oxygen, and it has a massive amount of cell turnover. So again, it requires a lot of energy and oxygen. And again, if the body is not interacting with sunlight, our oxygenation in our tissue is basically going to be impaired. We're not going to deliver the oxygen. We're not going to deliver the neural sort of stimulus as well, whether that's sympathetic or parasympathetic vagus activation there. And again, we're going to basically be having our hands tied behind our back. And of course, we're going to have gut issues. Of course, we're going to have motility issues. And again, the motility issues is literally 80% of the time the reason why most people have bacterial overgrowth or fermentation where they shouldn't have it in a small intestine. It's a motility issue. Most gut health
What do you mean by motility? Sorry, I don't know that word.
So the transit time, so how the muscular system is working within the GI tract. So peristalsis, there's some motor complex there, which is basically acting like a wave. And it's pushing the contents of the food through our body. And again, when we don't have the correct signal, primarily influencing by nitric oxide and calcium, which controls muscle contraction and relaxation with magnesium, then again, we're going to get this slow transit time. But again, it comes back from what happens in the outside of the body and in the eyes. Also how we breathe as well, because without breathing, we can't actually use or utilizing our breath, because that's utilizing oxygen. We can't really use any food products because oxygen's the holy grail, of producing energy in the human body. Without oxygen, we fall back. We go to sort of these primordial anaerobic metabolic states. And again, it has a time and place in certain conditions or certain tissues as well, i.e. red blood cells. They don't have mitochondria, so they actually operate in this manner. But again, for tissues that require massive amounts of oxygen, like the heart, the brain, the gut, the skin, again, these are the tissues which typically pop up with people's complaints.
Yeah. So
again, this is where it comes to like having skin in the game, being like understanding you got a solar panel. And again, most people know that if you cover up a plant or a tree outside, it's not really going to flourish. It's not really going to grow. Yet the same thing happens to the human body when you plaster it as sun cream, put sunglasses on, wear clothes all the time.
So
and don't expose yourself to sunlight. And don't expose yourself to sunlight, yet irradiate yourself with too much artificial sunlight. I mean, artificial light. Okay, so again, it's a conundrum where people are blocking this interaction and connection with sunlight. Free health, free medicine, basically. And it's just ironic that centralized doctors basically do everything they can to cover this truth. Again, without sunlight, there would be no life on this earth. There would be no oxygen. And again, it's just terrible information. And even functional medicine practitioners don't even understand how food's even produced with sunlight. And they would say that you just need a balanced plate of food where all carbohydrates are essentially safe and fruits healthy. Well, that's not really true. And again, it really depends on what kind of level you think at or where you're at. Because again, like, is fruit the most dangerous thing out there? No. Is it an A+? No. But again, if you're eating junk food, swapping it for fruit is obviously the step in the right direction. But it's still a bit of a half truth, because again, like in the winter in Australia, what's in your farmer's market?
Nothing. Yeah.
Exactly. So I just come back from the Middle East. Again, this is like the most harsh environment in the world where there shouldn't really be anything growing. Yet you walk into the supermarket and you think that you're in a tropical jungle, and again, it's just so ironic. Yet people don't blink an eye and they just think this is how it is. This is how the food system works when it's not.
Mm.
It's not. And again, unfortunately, people just don't understand this. And also at the same time, they probably can't go back to the ancestral roots, essentially, because psychologically, it will just be so impactful that telling them that maybe rice for this culture is probably not the right thing to be consuming at every single meal.
Yeah.
Because it's so embedded in their culture.
I've got so many questions. we touched on so many different points. I don't even know where to go from here. So I think the core of it, that, you know, I've spent a lot of time trying to understand health and wellness, and, you know, I came across your page because I loved the work that you do, and I've been following your work for quite a while, and I've made some adjustments in my life based on your recommendations as well. But I spend a lot of time and energy on this. You know, I read a lot of books in this space. I like follow a lot of content, and even a lot of the stuff that you've said, there's points of it where I go, oh, I don't actually understand what you mean, and I put in a lot of time and energy here. So I could imagine I'm the top 10%. So I could only imagine what the rest feel like. So and this is probably half the problem. People just, it's very complex, and every single different person you talk to has a different view on how they want to approach it. But how do you, what are some like core fundamental basics that you think for like the basic person, 10 seconds or 20 seconds? I know that's not ideal, but like that's all people want these days.
Well, that's a reflection of their state of mind. Like, just to be clear. Now, TikTok, Instagram Reels are trending and popular, and this is showing you the capacity of humans where we're at right now. Again, it has to be super dumbed down, because people don't have the concentration or capacity to learn it or get it, essentially.
Cheap dopamine.
It's just unfortunate. And again, this is it's only going to get worse.
What do you think? What do you think about
but to that question, like, even myself, I'm like, I still struggle to understand what. Again, I learn it, I understand it, but even myself, when I'm learning stuff, I have the same struggle. I'm like, okay, like, it is hard. Learning is hard, because at the same time you're unlearning, and this is where the magic. This is the magic, because you're learning, you're unlearning, then you're relearning. So it's a process every single day. Okay, and again, I'm in the same boat as everybody else. I'm just maybe a bit further down the road, or I need to learn more, because again, this is my job. This is what I do.
You're very articulate with the way you communicate too. So,
but again, there is some basic principles. Again, look around, see what's growing in your environment, be in your environment, live in your environment, touch your environment, get skin in the game in your environment, download in your environment, eat what's in your environment. Again, this is essentially a state of flow, coherence. And this is how it works.
So
again, like that's like literally simplistic. And again, you can, do you need to be 100% with that? No. What's the most important thing? It'll be the circadian rhythm and sunlight, basically. And making sure you're breathing well and connecting to earth, and you got some sort of purpose and sort of some identity in your sort of society or in your tribe, essentially. That's key. And as a man, for me, I believe that's basically to be the hero and to be the provider to, whether it's a girlfriend or a wife or to a loved one, to do that. That's a very important identity for a man to have. And because again, it's ingrained into our DNA, I believe.
Yeah.
And without it, we just go off track. We get distracted into bullshit and chasing things, and again, these sort of low dopamine traits of clubbing, drinking, gambling, just doing bullshit stuff, basically. When we have a firm grounding and coherence, basically nothing is going to distract us. You see someone else drinking and they'll be like, hey, Ryan, have a drink. I'll be like, no, like you do your thing. That's cool. It's not aligned. It's not my frequency. It's not that. And again, that's not very, again, you can go wacky with that and go spiritual with all that kind of Zen shit. But again, at the end of the day, it's like, this is my energy right here. Again, that's not aligning with me. And again, it's not to judge them and say they're bad people. It's just like, it just doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
Again, it's the same thing with food. And again, people don't have the awareness of food where they could just be eating junk food all day and you'd be looking at them like, how do they not feel like shit? Like, how are they not feeling the consequences of eating that deep fried tostone and whatever shit it is as well? You're like, wow, they're just completely lost and are disattached to their body and their awareness around things. But again, it's kind of interesting because the more connected you are to your body, and the more you're not going too deep, the more electrons that you have, the higher your redox, the more sort of aware and sensitive you get to sort of this energy as well. Because think about this, say for example, you got like a pristine glass of water, you put one contaminant in there and it changes the whole essence of the water in that cup. Now, if the water's already murky and you put a bit of contaminant in there, it's not really going to have the same effect.
It's an interesting
murky
analogy.
Anyway. So again, this is how the human body works. And again, when we start off, like I was like maybe many years ago, I had a murky glass of water. And again, we're basically cleansing or cleaning out that shit in that water to get to that pure state. And then when we get to that pure state, we can see more. Things become clearer. We can see the full spectrum of light. And again, like humans can't see UV or infrared light, yet other animals can. But again, certain humans vibrate so much up here. And again, that can come from various means, whether it comes from meditation, whether it comes from like being a Buddha on a mountain, where it comes from, I don't know, just downloading a lot of wisdom and reading, or whether it comes with, I don't know, having great nutrition and whatnot, or you just have an expansion. And again, this is awareness. This is like building nowness. This is like the essence of a human being, where we're not thinking about things too much and we're just living in the moment. And again, like I'm having this conversation with you, and again, like I've got my window open on my laptop, and I can see like maybe 30 tabs open of studies to read. Yeah, all I'm focusing about is like looking at you and having this conversation. And again, there's music in the background, which I can sort of hear, but again, I'm just focused about this conversation. My girlfriend's messaging on me on my phone, but again, I'm focused here because I'm being present. And this is a unique skill because again, this is flexing my dopamine levels. And again, as a practitioner, this is key as well, because I can understand what someone's saying or not being biased in a certain direction, and I can just see through things.
Yeah, I get that. I understand that fully. How did you go about getting into it sounds like you've gone down quite a spiritual path, and I'm guessing through travel and through needing to figure out a lot of like where the pain points were physically, and that tends to move into a spiritual kind of direction as well. Do you have any practices around that you kind of undertake?
Not really. I mean, I don't meditate. I like silence. I like certain parts of the day when I'm just by myself. I'm very comfortable with crying and letting go of feelings and attachments. I can let loose aggression, anger when needed. How did it come about? I don't really know. I think it's just like being by myself and having less judgment with my thoughts and just feeling it. Just feeling what's going on. And
yeah.
A few friends help, basically. So you have some people to share ideas with. But again, it was like no spiritual breakthrough or anything like that. Like I went on some yoga retreat or some bullshit like that, or read some Jordan Peterson book or anything like that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've listened to a few Joe Dispenza stuff, but again, I'm not sold on his take of it. I like some stuff that he shares, and it's fantastic. But again, I'm not sold on that. Okay, you can just like think and believe your way into everything. Something needs to give. I don't know. Maybe I'm unique, but
You seem pretty unique in all the best ways, so it's great.
But again, it's just like reading so many different people's takes or opinions or what worked for them. But again, not taking that as a truth and just seeing it for what it really is.
And that's a key
and
part.
Thinking first principles. Yeah, exactly.
That's a key part.
Because again, people get led away, and again, like they become like, okay, cool. I'm just going to listen to everything that comes out Paul Saladino's mouth. Yeah, the goalposts will be moving because again, his statements will be moving as well.
Well, he's changed a lot of what he said, since when he began.
But that's cool. So yeah, it's okay to change your mind.
It's
okay to say that you were wrong. That's great. But again, the issue arises when you are so adamant and you use blanket statements where you become factual. And again, you're in a position of power, yet you change you change the record so often. So again, you don't have it boiled down because again, no one knows it all. No one has got the truth, essentially. And again, this is what science is. Science is not factual. Science is based on probabilities.
And standing up to criticism.
Yeah. Again, it's not to nitpick like what he's done or what he says, because again, there's a lot of great stuff that he does share and it's helped a lot of people. But again, his stuff is no different to most paleo people back in the day. It's just slapped on with a different label. And again, what happens is he's just got a different sort of brand to it. Because again, Mark Sisson and all these sort of primal people back in the day, again, they're old now. And Saladino and others would be the new people bringing the message through. But at the end of the day, it's just a glorified paleo approach to food. And again, Weston A. Price is probably like the OGs of the sort of paleo community. And again, it's essentially the same stuff. It's just regurgitated.
Yeah, I think, look, at the end of the day, there is only so many things that you can do here. There's only so many approaches to it. And you made a mention of just like going back to the basics kind of. And I think that's what I'm really resonating with the stuff that you say is look at the world around you. It's this complex, all these big structures, we've lost our attachment to what we were for so long. And it's just getting back to that. And how do you get back to that, but also integrate into the fact that we are in a modern world? So I do have a question for you in that space. Like, what would you recommend for people living in cities like New York or London that want to kind of survive nutritionally, spiritually, kind of emotionally, but also somewhat integrate into the world they're in? Or do you think it's impossible?
Yeah, it's definitely hard because all the signals and energy that's coming into your body from this society or from the modern world is confusing. It's bringing you down, basically. And again, you're not going to be thriving. So again, I would say on the weekends, try to get outside, do camping, go on as many holidays or breaks away as possible.
So the only way you can survive is to leave, basically.
Well, again, I think this is essentially what's happening, where people are moving out of cities more and going more rural. And again, this was happening in the UK in lockdowns, where again the cost of living in a city is crazy. You don't get a lot of value for it. And you look around, say in a city like London, where I'm from, you're like, look, like £300,000 for a poxy flat. Like you could be living in a rural place with a garden and 4 bedrooms, and again be a bit more self-sufficient and peace. But again, I think this is the way it's going. Again, the luxuries of doing what I'm doing. Like I work online for the most part. I can be anywhere in the world of my liking. And again, it sort of came like, again, I had no idea I could do this. When I started training to become a nutritional therapist, my vision that I would be would be in a place in London called Harley Street, where all other nutritionists are, in a clinic room. However, lockdown happened, and this opened up the door where I'd be like, what? I can use Zoom. I can take my practice online. Why would I want to stay in London and do this? It's insanity. And then I was absorbing so much information about light, about melanin, about nature, basically. And I was like, well, this is a no-brainer. Let me embrace this, basically. And again, that was like, just took my health. Again, my health has a reflection on my clients' journeys as well. Because again, I have to have the most skin in the game and practice what I preach and lead by example. So that's super important for me. And again, what I see behind the scenes looking in the nutritional space is that there's a lot of dysfunctional, unhealthy people giving out health advice. And again, I can see it. It's like you look at Mark Hyman, and the guy just looks like a train wreck, basically, and he's fearing people about like eating an orange or what other crap, and basically he's promoting. Again, it's because his message is like all over the place. Basically, one day it's like promoting like a low protein diet and to only eat like fats and plants, and then again, next bit will say like pro meat or whatever it is. But again, it's just like. Or there'll be a guy in the UK called Tim Spector. Today, he was basically saying he'd prefer people to drink Coca-Cola than orange juice. And again, I'd be a fan of neither, basically. But again, the ignorance is that orange juice is obviously superior to Coca-Cola. Even a child knows that. And we're talking about, obviously, a fresh one. And again, the guy's got a PhD and he's not even applying any context to the statement. Because again, orange juices contain decent sources of a little bit of vitamin C, but again, folate. And again, there's a lot of studies to support its utilization in protecting against endotoxins, which is when bacteria fragments come in from the gut into the body when people eat a high-calorie meal. And again, most people out there in the general public would be eating high-calorie meals, such as on the weekends when they go a bit crazy. So again, an orange juice or an orange juice in a Big Mac would have actually a protective effect, yet this guy's saying like a Coca-Cola is actually better. And again, it's just like moronic things like that. And again, you look at the guy and he's a gut expert guy. And you're like, well, how would you say something like that? And the guy looks like very fragile and weak. And again, you can tell his brain's not working because there's a lot of stutters there. You're like, well, this is just like questionable bullshit. And then there's like this pro-metabolic community with a lot of people in like the females saying that you need to eat 6 meals a day and just glorify sugar. And you like look at them and they're just saying like, okay, it's pro-metabolic health. It's all about thyroid. Yet they're just not eating any seaweed or seafood. And I'm like, well, they don't really understand thyroid physiology or human evolution of like what the thyroid's really about with oxygenation. And again, you scratch your heads at the stuff because these are people who are spreading a lot of information. Some of it's okay, but some of it is just like horseshit. And you look at them and they just look.
You go.
Yeah, but again, like this is up for the people. It's not the practice. It's down to the people listening to this to take control and to put a bullshit detector in their brain and to realize that people don't know what they're talking about. People make it like it's laid out and that everything's factual. It's not. Even the shit that I know, again, I question it every single day. I'm like, am I actually talking the right stuff? Is this stuff actually legit what I'm saying? And again, I follow people on Twitter as an example who question the stuff that I say. And again, that's good for me. It makes me go deeper into the stuff that I'm sharing. Am I full of shit? And again, I really like it when people ask me questions or question my stuff. Because again, it makes me become better. It makes me become a better practitioner. And again, it's not popular or sexy to say, okay, it depends. What's the context there? It's not sexy. It's not a sexy sell. Saying, okay, sugar or plant vegetables or plants, vegetables are toxins. Like some guy, I don't know what his name is, but there's a carnivore guy out there who's basically like plants are toxins and they're going to kill you. It's just like complete bullshit. It's like complete bullshit.
Isn't that what Paul says as well? A little bit. He talks about.
Again, he's eating fruit, which again is a plant. But again, it's the context of certain plants. But again, there's common sense laid in there. And again, if you are really healthy, you can eat anything basically. It really doesn't matter, because again, Usain Bolt, the guy would eat KFC before he'd break the world record. And again, you're talking to someone who would literally just burn anything that's entered his body. It doesn't really matter. Even like professional footballers, they just need to eat anything. It doesn't matter so much because it's metabolized and burned. Sure, there's some considerations that they do require some minerals and electrolytes and certain nutrients to utilize, glucose as an example. But again, they could eat copious amounts of fruits or fruit juices. But again, it's understanding this, that's that sort of subpopulation, and that shouldn't be applied to the general population.
Yeah. So that's the key. I think the reality is that it does depend. Everyone is so different. There's such a spectrum of people. So it makes sense that, if you've got a small camp over here that thinks one thing and a small camp over here that thinks another thing, it ties in with the distribution, like a distribution of population. It makes complete sense. But I think the ability to spread a message so quickly now is the challenge, because everyone's voice is kind of weighted the same, even though some things are very, very niche. So I think I really, really agree with you on the first principles side of things, and like what makes logical sense. Like, would you take advice from, an overweight sick person on health? Would you take strength advice from somebody who doesn't look strong? Would you take relationship advice from somebody who doesn't have clear, positive, supportive relationships? Like I personally wouldn't. So I think we're kind of on the same page with all of that.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to be careful, because again, modern culture or society ideologies of what is an optimal human is extremely conflicted as well. So again, for some person that might be looking like a Greek god, or I don't know who to use as an example, but say like a bodybuilder, that would be okay, cool. He's got because again, everyone's talking about muscle mass and eating high protein diets at the moment. Now, again, that's a double-edged sword when you understand things. Consuming a lot of protein and inducing muscular hypertrophy has downstream effects later on in life. Again, humans are not we shouldn't look like gorillas, basically. Our mitochondria density is stored in our brain and hearts. Again, that's why bodybuilders have heart problems later on in life. Because again, what they're doing is they're hypertrophying all of a muscular, which the heart is a muscle. And again, that comes with a price to pay. And again, they're depleting their stem cells to grow the muscle. Now, again, you can train in a wise way where you might not have that same effects. Because again, I like training. I love
training too, yeah.
But again, it's about understanding what muscle, why does it serve us? And again, it's partially reflected with strength. And again, this is a whole thing about, okay, you can't just focus on resistance training. The actual magic of it is when it comes combined with cardio as well. Because again, cardio is actually really going to be upregulating mitochondrial biogenesis with a key enzyme called the PGC1 alpha. Again, everyone just focuses on hypertrophy in the muscles and just maxing out protein. And again, too much protein is not ideal. You want to be efficient with what's going on within your amino acid pool of your body. You don't want to just burn through them, basically. So again, there's a lot of context there. Again, you don't want to use protein as a fuel source, really. You want to be using fat or carbohydrates.
Yeah, it's I definitely go down the heavy camp of protein first, and then you hear those kind of conversations around high protein affects longevity, which kind of ties into what you were saying. But then on the same end, on the other side, you've got the vegan camp who are talking about, well, longevity, be vegan, it's the highest chance to live the longest. And what's that guy? Brian Johnson, I think it is. Yeah. He's eating a vegan diet. He's working on like that longevity element. What's your kind of thoughts around that conversation, where that's at?
Yeah. I mean, just look at the guy, and the guy looks like a ghost. So again, it just shows you can have all the money in the world, but have no common sense. But there is some truth to what he's saying. Having a low body temperature is a way of actually enhancing your longevity. The price of it is his quality of life is lightly impaired. He probably doesn't have a boner or any libido whatsoever. And again, he looks like shit and he looks anemic. So this is the dilemma. But this is again, it comes back down to like personalization and how you want to live your life. As we said at the start, there's that person who's eating deep fried tostones, not blinking an eye with anything he eats. Again, that's how he wants to live his life. That's his values. There's nothing wrong with that. That's his awareness, and that's where he's at. Good on him. Good luck to him. However, if Brian Johnson wants to like induce that sort of torture to himself for longevity purposes, good luck to him. He can do that. However, for me, it's about there's a middle ground there where, again, we're all going to die.
Well, he's hoping not.
Let's enjoy ourselves. Let's appreciate our health. Let's actually manifest and empower ourselves with being healthy, but let's not go too crazy with it. Like the people about COVID wearing masks and cleanliness, we can also see the opposite of that when you become like a health freak, where you're scared about everything that you put on your body or around your body, and you don't go outside anymore. There's people like that as well, because again, this is just like information that's just getting shared all the time in social media. But again, we are in a toxic infested world, but again, our body amazingly has the potential to protect us. When we have optimal health, basically we can repel all the crap out there, basically. Now, of course, if we're going to be basically just ingesting mercury from a test tube, like, again, that's not common sense, but like, that's not using common sense. But again, we could eat tuna and there'd be no ill effects from it, basically. And again, if you can actually find some research, again, because you can find anything that you want to prove your point, to show that eating tuna, it doesn't lead to any issues with mercury. But again, this is in a population who's living off the grid in the Pacific Islands, as an example. This shouldn't really be applied to people in Melbourne on tech who don't have good health. Maybe those people would actually have the ill effects from tuna, because again, it's a different population, it's a different context. However, me, who I think I have phenomenal health, I could buy tuna at the fish market right now and eat it. And again, the mercury might increase in my blood for 24 hours, and then it would basically be excreted out and not have any detrimental effects. Because again, our body is designed to handle heavy metals. We have things in place for it. Same thing for mycotoxins and mold. And again, this comes back to my story at the start of I had this issue with mold and mycotoxins. Mold and mycotoxins are not always just like, okay, cool, I've got it, it's the problem, they're the death of me. No, it was my poor health at the start which allowed me to have the problem with mycotoxins and mold. If I was actually healthy, I wouldn't have the problem with them. Again, mycotoxins and mold are ubiquitous in Central America because of the humidity. It's literally everywhere. Literally right there, you could see like some black mold on the ceiling. But again, because I'm in the sunlight so much, and my redox, my charge, my aura, whatever you want to call it as, is so charged, this isn't really going to touch me. Now, if I was sleeping next door to it for a few days, maybe I'd have the sniffles, or it might cause a few issues. But again, I've got detoxification processes in my body ready to go to handle this stuff, because humans evolved with fungi, with mold and mycotoxins. So again, this is the context. Once you have good health and optimal health, you could probably get away with a little bit of living in New York or London a few months or a few weeks, depending how healthy you are, depending how much charge that you have in your body. Now, if you have poor health, like I did in London, it's very hard to get back your health.
Yeah.
You need to make some changes. You need to get out of the environment a bit, charge your body, literally, then go back, keep on doing it, go back, doing it. And what do we see? What's a marker to be tracking with this? Well, it'd be vitamin D. Vitamin D would be a reflection of how much light energy your body is actually holding and how much stress it can handle for the sun. Because again, vitamin D is actually a byproduct, a hormone, as a stress response from sunlight. Because again, UV light is healthy, but it can also be stressful to our cells. And our response to UV light produces vitamin D. So how healthy our vitamin D is, or how high it is, would be an indication of how robust and how much light we're downloading and storing in our body. Now, it gets a bit murky now because, again, most people swallow pills for vitamin D, and that changes the number that we see in blood. So there's the context there. But again, for people who don't supplement, it would be a good marker to see the trends with, to see how much charge your body's holding.
And I think a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D these days as well. Like tons of people are deficient in vitamin D.
When you say vitamin D, they're deficient in UVB light. They're deficient in the inability to store light in the human body. It's not a supplement deficiency. It's not a food deficiency. It shouldn't be said in a way as it's a nutrient deficiency. It's a light lifestyle problem. You can't make vitamin D if you're unhealthy. So the way vitamin D works, you can't make vitamin D if you're dehydrated in your skin cells.
I didn't know that. Yeah,
well, again, how it gets created is from isomerization, which requires hydration in your skin cells to make on the surface. Because again, UVB doesn't penetrate deep; it's on the top layer of your epithelial cells. And again, you need good water there from your metabolism. You need cholesterol there. You need certain nutrients like sulfur there to make it. And again, that's correlated with magnesium levels. But again, magnesium levels really follow how healthy you are. So again, why are most people magnesium deficient? Is it purely on a nutritional deficiency dilemma? No. It's basically because their cells and mitochondria suck and they're dehydrated. Because magnesium, again, is water loving. So when you don't have water, you literally don't have magnesium in the game either. So there you go. There's your lack of energy. Because again, the chemical the chemical name for energy in the human body is ATP, but it actually technically is MgATP.
What's magnesium? Mg. Okay, right, gotcha.
Because again, it's always associated with energy.
There's a lot here. There's a hell of a lot here. So I'd love to dig into the kind of sunscreen and the sun conversation. So, my girlfriend, for example, is like a big sunscreen, sun smart kind of person, and she would like me to wear sunscreen, but I'm kind of I'm not at this stage, and I haven't been burnt all year. I spent my winter in Mexico and New York. Similar kind of scenario, just getting as much sun as I can, and I was never burnt. And then I came back to Australia for this summer, and I haven't been burnt once. So, and I remember a reel that you did a little while ago that mentioned the best way to not be burnt in the summer is to get sun in the winter. And that kind of clicked that maybe the lower UV sun in Mexico and New York has then prepped my body for the higher UV sun in Australia. And I've managed to be fine the whole year. But what are your thoughts around, using Australia as a specific point, the ozone layer, being gone and the high UV rates versus, say, other parts of the world, and that risk versus that, how to balance that?
Yeah, so it's everywhere in the world is different, and again, that's connected with altitude as well. So altitude will have an effect on the strength for the power of the UV too. Pollution, particle matter, would have an effect on how UV interacts with your body as well. So particle matter, pollution from car emissions would also be a type of sun cream, blocking how light is interacting with with the body. You are likely grounded on the beach in Mexico or in Australia as well. So again, that's also connected to potentially not burning. If you're wearing like rubber flip-flops on the beach, like most people do, or you sunbathe on like just a plastic sound lounger, you're likely more predisposed to getting sunburn, in my opinion, because you're not grounded.
I love those shoes, by the way. Quick side note.
Dirt runners.
Mate, they're so good. I love them.
Yeah. Then you feel free. But why you didn't burn, or how to improve people from not needing sun cream, will be morning light exposure. It's basically setting the tone for the rest of the day. So again, it's when UVA and UVB is not out. And again, this is priming. It's a bit like your warm-up sets in the gym. So it's improving and hydrating your cells, basically. That's what red light therapy and infrared light does. It improves the efficiency of energy production in your mitochondria. Therefore, they're producing more water. Therefore, you have capacity and a reservoir, essentially, to create that vitamin D. And you're building that vitamin D. You're building a battery. And again, people who go from 0 to 100, they don't have that water there. They don't have that precondition. They don't have that warm-up sets in place. That's when you're going to get the injury per se. So that's the dilemma that most people face, is that they unfortunately are in an office 350 days of the year, and then those 16 days of their holiday, they hit the beach. And again, of course, they're going to get
themselves. Yeah.
It's like stepping in a ring with Tyson Fury without any training. Again, it's a big issue, but yet people don't see it like that. Or it could be like you don't drink, and then suddenly you just go get wasted, and you have a few drinks, and of course you're going to get drunk. Of course you're going to have a hangover. Well, same thing as within the body. Again, sunlight is very strong. It's a medicine, basically. It's a drug. So again, you have to be careful with it. So again, this is where sometimes UV light is too harsh for some people, because they don't have their health there to fully flex it, to fully utilize it, and they only need a small amount. And again, that's okay. You just have to build up your solar callus. You have to build up like your muscular strength. You have to build up your muscle fibers. But again, it's just different. You have to build up your skin health, your skin layers. And again, this is where hormones come into the picture, things such as estrogen, which has an effect on the thickness of your skin as well. So again, this is the dilemma where like you can see data suggesting like cancer developing with postmenopausal women when estrogen goes south. And again,
so
they don't
high
have
estrogen, higher thick skin. Is that kind of the
well, potentially, but again, it's never like one hormone's bad and it's not, because again, you see that in an alternative world where everyone labels estrogen as being toxic. It's not really the case. Again, you need good estrogen signaling for progesterone to be there anyway, and progesterone is a tag team of estrogen. So there's a very confusing subject there. But again, like you do need good estrogen activity on your skin to act as a protective layer there as well. And remember, like men also have estrogen in our body as well, and it does have beneficial properties such as sex drive, libido, and even muscle function as well, and energy production. Again, people downplay it and think it's toxic, and they think they need to just eat carrot salads all the time to lower their estrogens.
Did you say eat carrot salads?
To lower estrogens, yeah.
What's that about?
There's a community out there, pro-metabolic people, who'd be like, estrogen's toxic. It's all about progesterone because it improves insulin sensitivity and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And again, you can see some studies that associate, or animal studies that associate estrogen with problems. But again, it's not really the whole truth. There's again a context there, because again, if you actually remove the ovaries of an animal or block one of the receptors of estrogen, which there's two main ones, they become fat and obese. So that theory is like completely knocked in the head when you remove the receptor, because there would be no estrogen signaling, yet these animals get fat and obese and metabolic syndrome. So again, there's context there. But yeah, one of the ideas would be carrot salads, eating a lot of mushrooms, bamboo shoots, calcium deglucarate supplements to lower estrogen.
Okay, I've never heard of that. Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah. Again, what lowers estrogen naturally in the human body? Well, sunlight does as well. So again, you use it, and it's controlled for. That's the thing. Everything works in a feedback loop. Why is estrogen so high in the first place? If it is high, well, again, you could be obese. Also, your brain could be stimulating too much estrogen into your ovaries. Why? Because it's not getting a signal from the environment to turn off the pituitary gland from secreting these hormones. So again, there's loads of things at play here.
I think there's a fair bit I want to kind of get into, but I feel like there's so many different pathways we can go here. But I'll keep it a bit more high level, just purely because I don't want to get too deep in case, people get confused, including myself, because there's so much here. There's so much information to undertake. So again, I want to kind of get some practical tips for people on to ideally live the best life in a health and wellness way. So, I'd love to hear, like, what would you say would be a perfect day for, like, what would be like, if you could wake up and frame your day exactly how you wanted to and do everything you want, knowing you'll be giving yourself the best shot of optimum health, what would that be like? What's that perfect day look like to you?
You're waking up close to sunrise. And for me, it would be protecting that first hour of the day, doing something that adds great value to my mental, emotional, or physical health. Whether that's reading a book, whether that's going for a walk, whether that's having sex, whatever that is, whether it's like meal prepping, because that's the most important element that you need to get down because you have to go to work and all your food choices are shit. Yeah. That would be an important factor. So protecting that golden hour, which is what I would call it. And that would be either side as well. So the hour before bed too. So then it would be like doing some form of movement, nothing crazy, stretching or
in the morning,
swimming,
first thing.
Yeah, or walk. Well, not too, yeah, but again, after reading or whatever you wanted to be doing. Then for me, it would be having a breakfast, eating like a king in the morning. And then from there, obviously, I'm in a real world. I've got work commitments. So I'd be just be doing my work throughout the whole day. I would have a gap I'd have breakfast first, then I'd do my work. And then I'd have a gap for maybe a very easy lunch, like a smoothie or something, or I don't know, something easy. And then I'd maybe work out in the afternoon and then maybe do a little bit of work or do something a bit more creativity. With like doing a podcast or writing an article or a newsletter or learning. And then I'd cook just before like sunset and then eat in that sort of dusk period, not like dead on sunset, but maybe like an hour after sunset. I think that, again, it's a bit of a gray area of when to end your fast or to when to end your eating of the day. I think that obviously the invention of fire, and even going back and looking at the series of Vikings, you can see that they feasted in the nighttime as well. So again, I don't think it's like a death sentence to be eating late at night within reason, but obviously after like 8 o'clock, I think that's a bit too late. But again, so I'd be eating my dinner just after sunset and then just chilling, whether I be with my friends or reading a book or going to bed. But I'd be going to bed here around about 8:30, 9 o'clock. I'm tapping out at about 8 o'clock, 8:30.
And you're up at about 5:30?
Yeah, 5:30, 5 o'clock.
Yeah, nice. So yeah, that's a pretty solid kind of day, and it's all quite basic stuff. Like, would you say you would include some form of kind of grounding in the morning, or
Well, I
um,
mean, I'm grounding all day.
of course. I think there's the challenge with some people is that they don't have the luxury of that all day. So if they're in maybe they're in an office environment, or like what would be a list of, if you could put kind of a checklist of things to do to have optimum health for someone in, say, a corporate, city life, what would that be? What would that list of non-negotiables look like? We've got a couple down pat by the sounds of it. So movement and sunlight, eating.
Yeah. So again, it'll be try to embrace them as much together as possible. So like three birds, one stone. So again, whether your movement could be done in a park when you're grounding,
Mm-hmm.
and that's on the way to work, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you're getting the light in, you're grounding, you're doing moving.
Mm.
Problem solved. Again, when you're in the modern world, you do have to leverage things. You do have to do some things differently. I would disagree with the ideology of like waking up extremely early, especially in like the winter when it's dark, and going to the gym at 5 a.m. under artificial lights. I would
Why do you say
disagree with
that?
that. Because again, it's like you're breaking the laws of nature. You're going from 0 to 100 with the artificial light. You missed out on the infrared and red light and the gradual increase in the visible spectrum with the UVA coming. And you just irradiated your body with blue light, which again is toxic. It's slightly worse like than smoking and sugar. So that's an issue. So again, if I had clients who's like that in the depths of winter when the light period is very short, I'd be like, okay, literally maybe one day and your weekend, that's when you can likely go and train in a gym where you can actually train on your days off and do it in the middle of the day instead of waking up at 5 a.m. when really you should be in bed, and leveraging that time of season for more sleep.
This is
But again, this is the problem, is because again, if you might hear that you need to train 4 days a week and you've got a workout program and your personal trainer is getting you in there and you got to stick to it and you got to be disciplined because everyone says you got to be disciplined and you need to be all about muscle growth or hypertrophy. Well, again, like I said at the start, maybe that's not the best time of year to induce that. Maybe you save that for the summer. Maybe the winter is about consolidation. Maybe it's actually the time to get leaner. Maybe it's when you can embrace a bit more of a calorie deficit, where you can do a bit more of a low carb diet, where you can induce a bit more cold therapy, a bit more fasts, more sleep. This is the time. Again, this is how you embrace and become empowered, when you could decipher this. And instead of being like, cool, I need to do cold therapy in the summer, or I need to have a beach body for the summer, when in theory, the summer is probably the time for growth. Essentially, it's the time to put on tissue and a bit of fat and muscle for the winter, depending where you live. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. I was just wondering if you would say that the winter period, that down period, is part of optimal health by like having those peak periods of the summer and then kind of going into more of like a hibernation period versus, say, I was thinking about going from summer to summer in different in different continents, whether that's maybe not the optimum way to approach your health.
Yeah, I mean, I have this question for myself as well, because obviously I'm from the UK and I'm in Central America, which doesn't really have much of a contrast or a cold season. It just has sun, dry or wet. So again, I have these thoughts in my head, is that I'm not really flexing that cold pathway of my body, which I also crave, funny enough. Am I actually inducing damage or something that I'm unaware of always in this environment? Now, the interesting story of this is humans evolved from Africa. So I have maybe in like my back of my filing cabinet, basically, of my genes, the ability to produce melanin, which offsets that. So that's why I have an amazing tan. is because my body adapts. Now, for an African American person, them living in Canada, they don't have the ability per se to change their melanin and to get white so they can absorb more light. They don't have that capacity. So I think I've got more adaptation opposed to people from the equator going to the northern or southern hemispheres. Are you following along with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So,
because again, I can always go darker. Again, someone with darker skin can technically get lighter or less tanned, but their pigmentation's always there. So that's the dilemma that they face when they move away from the equator. It's more harsher. Again, I think obviously there's a period, but I think the rate of getting a tan is superior, and the power of the light on our skin is superior, and the way that our mitochondria are slightly different, because they essentially cannot handle cold temperatures or cold therapy as well as someone from Northern Europe who can literally let go of a pressure valve in our mitochondria and release heat to keep ourselves warm.
So I think, again, it comes back to everything needs to be unique and specific for the individual person. You know, it can't.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
But again, to claw back your health, again, spending more time in the sun, spending more time away from the city, from people, finding times for yourself, just get reconnected with yourself in nature. Again, I think we're in a society it's all about always more and more and bigger is better and buying things, when really it should be about stripping things away and needing less convenience items, basically.
Being more intentional with the things that you do, you know, depth over breadth, for sure.
100%.
For sure. Yeah, nice, man. I've got one other question for you. How much time do you have, by the way?
I'm good.
You're good? Okay, cool. Well, look, I'd love, you know, you mentioned that you follow some people on the other side of the aisle of kind of the health and wellness space. And how could you steel man their side and their point of view? Like, if someone's on the complete opposite spectrum of what you you know, you understand and you're approaching to your clients, what would be the steel man argument on the other side?
So why do I know that they're full of shit? Or why do I know then they're only saying half of the thing?
No, I mean, so like, you know, using somebody who says the complete opposite, well, not the complete, it's hard to frame this question, but say, well, there's so many different approaches to go here, but say there's somebody in the, you know, the Brian Johnson OMAD, 1 meal a day, you know, plant-based, vegan only, and it's you know, it's quite separate to what you're talking about in your work. How could you, and you guys were in a room together, how could you steel man their position to say that, you know, to give the positives of what they're saying? Does that make sense?
No. Steel man. Just, I mean, what does steel man mean?
Oh, so sorry. So steel manning means, so let's just say, so you take the other side of the position that you don't necessarily agree with, and you try and create some forms of logic as to why it might be correct. So it's a good way to
Okay. So again, it's to understand that you essentially need to get a good grasp of physiology and first principle thinking about how humans essentially work. Again, that's not laid out in textbooks per se. It requires some understanding of human evolution, ancestral biology, essentially, how life was created on this earth. Then you can just essentially distill what they're trying to say and understand, like, okay, did you know that if you go to the depths of the oceans, that there's life forms in freezing cold water, which are like hundreds of years old.
Mm.
Because cold
well,
therapy literally slows down time.
I
Because
didn't
time's
know
essential.
that.
Because that's what it is basically, and time is basically. Everyone has a different reality of time.
Mm. Mm.
And it might not be drastic compared to each other, but there's a slight variation of it. And again, maybe someone says, "Oh, I lost track of time," because again, time has a value, but we have the same amount of time in the day, but how that actually is driven on a qualitative sort of fashion is different in every single person. So this is really coming back down to like how you like your passion in your work. Do you enjoy the stuff that you do? And again, like time is our most valuable asset that we have, because that's what health is about. Health is fundamentally about slowing down your perception of time and allowing you to spend time with the things that you value, which is again is a personal experience of living. Like that person eating tostones, deep fried plantains. That's how he values his time. It's not right or wrong how he wants to live his life. Me, as an example, I don't want to do that. I know the risks benefit ratio of that. I don't enjoy that. I'd rather eat some oysters and do something else.
That's definitely something I've been adding to my diet recently. Is the oysters and the prawns and that sort of stuff. Because
that's that's adding value. So that's adding value from a timescale point of view, because it's adding value into your health. But again, maybe that guy doesn't know any different, or maybe the guy wants to burn his candle faster than we do. And that's okay. That's how he wants to go out. Brian Johnson wants to go out in a really slow way.
Yeah.
However, he's paying a fortune to do that.
Yeah.
And like I said, his quality of life isn't
great.
Different. And again, it's painted in a certain way when in reality, he could be feeling like shit. And I would probably say he probably does feel like shit the way he looks. Because again,
it's
he's
hard
scared
to say.
of the sun. Well, again, he's scared of the sun. That means he doesn't have a lot of dopamine. And again, that means that he can't really think that well. So even if we did have a debate or a conversation, he probably wouldn't even comprehend what I'd be trying to say. And that's the problem with vegans, is that there's a big disconnect with how their brain fundamentally works with acetylcholine, basically.
Again, do you think there's
truth to a vegan diet? Technically, not a vegan, all-out vegan diet, but there's maybe a truth to a low animal protein diet in certain cultures around the world. But again, context is, show me the people who are living in that way now. Like most vegans would be in LA or New York, living in a bubble with their tofu cheese or whatever it is. Like those vegans never had that in these ancestral communities. So again, people pluck these ideologies out of thin air. But again, I do think that if you lived in the tropics, you don't really need to eat that much protein per se. A little bit goes a long way.
What would be the benefits of, what would be the positives of, say, someone that does have, say, a vegan diet from your understanding?
Again, I don't think there's a good or bad to it. I don't think I think you need to be in the sun so much and be grounding so much that again, I don't think you can apply modern human physiology to it, because you wouldn't be able to do what you really need to be doing on a structural perspective. So again, like working, solving problems, that would probably be a hard feat for someone to do on that sort of diet or way of living, because again, they wouldn't have the base or a large amount of amino acids to produce all these neurotransmitters to do these problem solving. And maybe that's why the Northern Hemisphere countries literally took over the world and went and abused people with slavery, as an example, because of our high protein diet. Maybe that's something there, because they had the capacity and the brain power to do that. I mean, I just thought of that, and obviously I'm all against slavery and everything like that. But again, it's just like, well, it was like the Dutch, it was the Spanish, it was the English, the French, the Americans that literally went on sailing boats around the world and basically just destroyed countries and stole the essence of countries, essentially. Why wasn't it the other way around?
There's a book about this that I read. I can't remember what it's called though. That talked about some possible reasons around what happened and why it might have happened. But geez, I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But anyway, it's a very interesting topic that I've thought about quite a lot. And there was another, it's somewhat unrelated, but it the ideas around, you know, the human body being unable to digest lactose, and then when you dig into it, there's this whole kind of theory around, well, in fact, you should be able to digest lactose. And correct me at any moment if I'm providing incorrect information, but from what I understand is the people who were able to digest lactose earlier on in human history were then able to extract nutrients in a much better way than those who couldn't, and therefore those people survived and were able to pass down that ability to digest lactose to, say, their offspring and stuff. Is that something that you've kind of dug into a bit?
Yeah, I mean, there'd be truth into that, but on top of that, you'd have your microbiome, which would be the first step in extracting and breaking down the lactose, essentially. So even if you don't have, or you have a genetic predisposition of being lactose intolerant, your microbiome would actually be the mechanism of you being able to handle dairy.
So the combination of the two.
So again, like antibiotic use at childhood would probably be a massive factor. And your immune system on a whole, to your ability to handle lactose. I think most humans can actually, again, when we talk about lactose, again, we have to put the context in of what actual dairy products are we talking about. Are we talking about the shit you find in most supermarkets, or are we actually talking about proper
raw
dairy products? Raw milk or fermented dairy products. There's a big difference.
Yeah, I've begun to move away from the pasteurized milk, and I'm going into kind of the goat's milk approach. Again, I took some advice from the content that you do, and kefir and all those Greek yogurt, all those kind of elements. Definitely,
for sure. I
think there's a much higher use.
Again, most people could do much better with goats and sheep's milk than cow's milk. And again, I do actually think the whole raw milk movement is way over the top. I actually don't agree with it that much. I think it's too heavy. I don't think a human should be consuming what most people prescribe with raw milk.
Yeah. Okay. So you think maybe the good middle ground is, say, the A2 goat's milk kind of?
Yeah, I mean, but again, I don't think it. Yeah, I don't think a large amount of our energy intake should be coming from raw milk or milk in general. Again, if you're going to add a little bit to coffee, or have a little bit in like your smoothie or whatever, I don't think it's a big deal. Or a bit of cheese, I don't think it's a big deal. For me, it's like a complementary sort of food. Yet there'll be people like consuming a shit ton of raw milk every single day. And I think that is,
Mm.
again, milk actually has got some opioid properties where it actually isn't addictive. And again, it's just sort of a bit
Really?
like, oh, milk was bad, and now it's good. You can have it. And again, this is like when you become an adult for the first time, and you can now you can order takeaways and shit food. And again, you're just going to basically go all in. And I think this is the same thing with milk, where it's now deemed a free pass, and people are just sort of abusing it and taking it to the extreme level. And again, like I said, it has opioid addictive properties. Again, for a
I
very
didn't know
good
that.
reason, because again,
Wild.
babies, all mammalian babies, crave it for that very reason. Again, I mean, in the summer, I was in the UK, and there was this place that done like raw milk from a vending machine, which was epic. And again, I was like noticing, like, holy shit, it hooks you. It really does. Again, not a lot of people discuss this. Again, is it okay? Yeah, of course it's okay. Is it better than like the shit you're going to get in a supermarket? Yeah. Like if you're eating like shit food, obviously it's going to be very nutrient dense food for you. However, if your diet is literally on point, I'd be like, okay, treat it as a complementary food.
Have it as a bit of an extra, but not as a primary. Hey, do you mind if I quickly run to the bathroom for 2 seconds?
Sure, go for it.
Give me 1 sec. All right. You there?
Yep.
Yo. Thanks for that. I had some water, a big glass of water in the morning. And it was kind of building up after the last half. So I'm like, I need to have a quick break. But this has been awesome. I'd love to get your thoughts on another thing, going into the kind of health and wellness space. What can we take from blue zones? You hear about these blue zones all the time, and each one has its own unique set of properties. Like there's a Mediterranean one, and then there's Eskimos, and I think there's a couple I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're the two that jump out.
Blue zones.
What could you take from somebody?
For sure. So all blue zones boil down to is a culture, living a lifestyle connected to local food and being outdoors. That's all it is. It's nothing special in a diet. It's nothing special in their genes. It's literally lifestyle-led habits. That's all it boils down to. And you can take the same application with Weston A. Price, with the populations that he studied. They all had skin in the game. They're all eating local seasonal food, no matter what the hell it is. That's all it came down to. So the pictures of him with the Hasda, I think it was, or the picture of him in the Amazon rainforest, all these people had skin in the game. They didn't live in a tech jungle. They didn't live with clothes on that much. They didn't apply sunscreen to their body. They didn't go on social media for 2 hours a day. They didn't even have a social media guru to look up to. They didn't even have podcasts or books to read. They were just human beings in a habitat and in the environment and decentralized. That's blue zones. Yeah, you could pull and extract shit and say, okay, cool, it's because of their extra virgin olive oil intake. I would say that's a misnomer. Again, I disagree with the concept of going crazy with any added fat in the diet. Fat, again, is an expensive commodity metabolically. You don't need to eat that much of it. And why would you need to add anything extra to it? Again, sure, there's some properties in extra virgin olive oil which are nice and helpful. Yeah, again, that's all it is. It's just eating a local environment, food, which complements and is coherent with them having their biology in the game. It literally connects one another.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay.
I mean, there's
cool.
nothing.
Well, I want to. We'll tie off pretty soon.
It's not rocket science about that, though. Yeah, there's books about it.
I don't think much of it. Yeah.
There's associations of having a low protein diet with these blue zones. Again, that's not actually the case. There's I think one population in Costa Rica, they eat a lot of pork. They used to eat a lot of pork lard. Now, obviously, they get all the shit from America and it's vegetable oil. Same thing with the Pacific Islands. No, the population of Japan. The Okawa, I can't pronounce the names, but again, they ate a lot of pork as well, and fish. The same thing with the Greek islands. They ate a lot of fish and sheep or lamb. So again, it's the context of these populations.
It's fatty meats, isn't it?
Well, again, it's meat with fat on it. We're not going out the way just to eat pure fats or adding fats on. And again, if you also boil it down, is that these fats in this meat is essentially a lot of it is saturated and monounsaturated fatty acids. Depending on the time of year, it would change the ratios. Again, all these populations are always close, typically, to the sea as well. So there's a big
so there's a lot more time probably by the beach.
Well, again, seafood, shellfish.
So you think there's more time by the water?
Yeah, exactly. And eating the food from the water as well. This is how humans evolved out of Africa on the waterways, on coastal paths. And this is why all the major cities around the world is tied to water. Like Melbourne, it's on the sea.
I don't know. The whole coast, I think 70% of the population in Australia, maybe more, is by a coastline. So that says a lot.
Well, why? Well, why? It's an island. It requires seafood for the population to consume. That's why.
There was an interesting side note that I saw around the world. If you had somebody draw or paint what an ideal landscape would look like, it all looked the same. So there was there's a standard beautiful landscape across the globe for people that has mountains, that has water, that has lush grass, irrespective of what part of the world that people are in. The foundations are the same. It's as though we're pulled towards these locations on a core level. And we feel calm and we feel drawn to these regions purely because of how lush they are and how much food you can get, and all these other elements, which I always found quite interesting. Have you heard about that?
Well, I think I was reading stuff about the Egyptians and why they chose these locations of the pyramids, and it's very unique. And even like the Mayans with their sort of temples and the way they pinpointed it down to these unique positions. Again, I don't know why certain. Again, even you can actually bring it down to like St. Paul's Cathedral in London as a unique looking spot in a hill in Richmond Park, which with an unobstructed view all the way, which is at least like 13 miles or 20 kilometers. So there's some unique, weird things going on in positions of like important monuments or places around the world. It's very unique. And again, how do they know this? Well, who knows? There's some drawing and some energy there which made it happen. It's very unique. Again,
I agree.
But this is what we should be feeling. Is again, like when you buy a new home or when you're renting somewhere, you get this vibe about something. Oh, this feels really at home. It feels really grounding. It draws you in.
Yeah, exactly right. There's a lot to be said about kind of the energetic understanding that you feel throughout the day and kind of being able to tap into that. Have you heard of a Vipassana?
No.
It's the silent meditation retreats, the 10 days where do you know those where you kind of go for 10 days, no phone, no reading?
I've heard of them, yeah.
So I did one in August last year, and that was the first one. It was 10 days, and I've been very, I guess not anti-spirituality, but a bit more, I'd lean against the ideas of a lot of esoteric things. And you hear people talk about energy and the way that things interact, and I always thought to myself, oh yeah, okay, whatever, fine. I never really took too much notice of her. I'd kind of just shut down or block it out when someone started talking in that kind of space. But I did this meditation course, and about halfway through it, I began to get so sensitive, because what you're doing, right, is you're sitting there, you're meditating for 12, 13 hours a day. You're up at 4:30. You don't have a phone. You're not talking to anybody. So you're getting so sensitive to what is internal. And I began to feel the sensations in my body so much more intensely than I'd ever felt in my life. And just got very in tune with how my body was kind of moving and flowing throughout the day. And then I got out of there, went back to my house, and it was funny. I walked into my door and just got hit with a thick, bad vibe. I was like, I've never felt this before, but it's here. And it must have been here the whole time, and it's probably affected my health. But up until that point, I'd never noticed it. So I've become a lot more open and receptive to kind of the vibe of people, the vibe of places. And it's been wild to kind of see that develop. Is that kind of in part why you stayed in Nicaragua, because it just felt right?
Yeah, I think there's a language barrier that I have at the moment, so my Spanish is not up there. It's okay. So that's obviously disconnecting me. Sí, poco. But that's still like disconnects me a little bit. But again, I can connect. There's some Westerners around here. There's just enough, but there's also, I can stay in the jungle and just like not talk to anyone. And again, I don't find that problematic or an issue. Again, I think that humans are overstimulated with interactions and seeing like the amount of humans and speaking to humans all the time, when ancestrally we would probably that would probably be limited. So is your response actually just normal? Like what you did? Was it actually too extreme for you though at the same time as well? Did you have to go in with a 10-day one, or could you just started with like a 3-day one?
No. So I mean, you can do a 3-day one somewhere, but this specific approach is predicated on doing the 10 days because that, you know, you get to like day 6 or day 7 and your whole experience begins to change. So you have to do the 10 days with this kind of approach of the Vipassana, and then you can do 3 days after you've done the 10 because you've immersed yourself in the core of it and you've got a clear understanding of what you're getting yourself into, as opposed to dipping your toe. So there are plenty that you can do that aren't 10 days, but this one is quite intense. But I survived. I got to the other side, and I'd like to do another one soon. So I'm probably going to look into doing a 3-day in the next few months. It's wild, but it's good to put yourself into challenging situations and see how you grow. So I'm all about it. I'll give you a couple more questions, and then I'll let you go, man. I don't want to take up too much of your night from here. We've been chatting for a while. I feel like we could chat for 3-4 hours if we wanted to. But I want to loop back to you again. Your story is quite interesting. You've got a lot of health problems. You said you were a bit of a rebel and acting out over the years, and that might have led you into kind of not accepting the status quo, which has probably given you a better quality of life in the grand scheme of things, which is great. But like, what advice would you give yourself from say 10 years ago to move yourself in a good direction?
I mean, I personally wouldn't change anything, but I would just say patience, explore, ask questions, don't rush, don't always trying to find an answer for some things. Some things don't require an answer. And keep on learning.
Yeah. Yeah, they all foundational core things. I love it.
I mean, do
you have any podcasts?
One final thing would be don't be scared to burn bridges as well.
Well, it's a hard thing, isn't it? When you don't, it's a lack mindset when you don't think you're enough, so you will latch onto anything that comes your way. So it's really, you begin to accept yourself. Once you begin to accept yourself more, you can let go of things that aren't serving you, be that people, be that food, be that lifestyles. Comes down to finding that core foundation.
100%.
So, yeah. Hey, what would you say is the most impactful book you've read, and why?
I don't know.
You've read a lot.
There wouldn't be one specific book at all. I think, there won't be one book. I think understanding life on the planet, how it came about, is everyone should really understand the history of Earth or life or the essence of why we're here. That book would be Nick Lane. And the book is Survival, Sex and Suicide, I believe it's called. Sex, Suicide and Survival.
Sex and Suicide, did you say?
Yeah, I think that's the book. He's got 3 similar books, basically. I should really double check that, but oh no. So again, there's several books. So Power, Sex and Suicide, or The Vital Question, which is basically all about understanding how life appeared, why are we here, essentially. And again, it's a question. So the book is an open question because science is based on probabilities. He's not saying this is factual per se, but he's like, this is the best guess and probability that we have.
Power, Sex and Suicide. Yeah, I've got it here. Mitochondria and the Meaning of Life.
Yeah. So again, it touches upon health. It's a fundamental book in my opinion to read.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll add it to my list. I haven't read that. I'd never heard of it. So it's got some good reviews as well. Nice. Nice. And just one last question for you, and a very simple one. What do you think the why of all of this is? Like, what's the meaning of all of this?
Of humans or our lives?
Just life, the meaning of life.
Well, I think we've sort of created an illusion about it. Again, I believe it was about what we've sort of done and where we're at. But again, I think it's taken a few wrong turns. And maybe whoever you believe knew this was going to be the downfall of human evolution, where it's too much of a good thing, i.e. our brains and the ability to think, where it's our own problem. But again, I think it's like laced with innovation, reproduction, survival, adaptation. That's really what physiology is all about, is adaptation. Again, that's why we're fundamentally here. Unique events on this planet. And we were the ones that adaptated the best, given the cards that were dealt. And as a result, we became the top of the chain, or top of the food chain, where now we control essentially a lot of our destiny, where we could be sick and inflamed and do damage to our body, yet still be alive, when in theory, we would not be here or have the luxury and convenience of, I don't know, being around. I think that, me personally, I think that has a cost to the human consciousness and our planet, us becoming godlike. And I think that brings our vibe essentially down as a species, because we create the rules now. We manipulate everything now. And when you listen to people like Bill Gates trying to block the sun and all that kind of shit, and then dish out what we should be eating and what we should be putting in our body, it's crazy. But again, the purpose of it is to adapt. I think there's an element of having fun, enjoying the experience, struggle, the ups and downs. Because again, it's feedbacks. To have happiness, you've got to have an experience of sadness. Yet, again, humans think that they should be in this placid state of happiness all the time. Unfortunately, that's not really how it works. And when you go to the extreme end of that, or when you experience that sadness, it's like you can't even handle that, because again, we're fragile and weak. So again, I think struggle is very important for humans to have. I think failing is also one of them things, and all the successful people would say failing is part of the process. Where Mark Zuckerberg, I think his name is, was like, I failed on so many things before I even made Facebook. And again, I think he said Beyonce had so many shit songs before she made that one hit. Again, that's struggle. And again, everyone
struggle with myself, a purpose.
Yeah, even myself, my health journey, there was a struggle, and you don't appreciate it. You don't appreciate anything without a struggle when you sort of lose it, and then you value it again. And again, it's just unfortunate. That's how humans really work, like that. Again, I think that's why we're here, to adapt, to test ourselves. But again, it's just like the conditions of life now are radically changed. But again, it's not a bad thing. It depends how we use it. Because again, we can't turn back we can't turn back the clocks. Again, this is the cards that you and I have been dealt. Again, it's like we're lucky to even be here with all the other sperm from our father to even be here, or the egg. So this is a blessing in itself, but still, I personally, I would love to be in a time of like Spartans or Vikings. Again, maybe I wouldn't have lived as long, but I think I would have had an amazing experience.
Had a
More
sick
so,
time.
more of a yeah, having a more human experience. Um, and again, even like in the war, like World War II, obviously it was a horrid time. But again, that you just go back and you think like, wow, these people literally lived it. And what we are right now is again fragile and docile, where we complain about the most mediocre things possible. And again, we think from the Western world that we're really hungry, when really we're abundant, and we're just basically can't even utilize our fat on our body, basically, and our brain is so wired to consume or wired to eat that we don't really understand what hunger is, or our physiology is like not functioning to be able to not need to eat for a little bit. But again, that's my take
So
on
I
that
think,
question.
You go. So just to recap on that, it's struggling well and enjoying yourself and not taking every bit of, fun experience you possibly can, and be more focused on the things that you do. What else did you say? I think they're the key things, some of the key things that I took from that. But just struggling well, really.
Well, I mean, struggle. Have struggles, feel it, and adapt. Embrace the suck.
I had one final question.
Sorry, I think there's a bit of a delay. Embrace the struggles, basically.
That's okay. Yeah, definitely. Well, on that note, I mean, what would you how would you recommend if somebody wanted to kind of go down a path that you're going down right now? So you're able to live in a tropical part of the world. You're working remotely. You're spending your time developing your skills, and you're managing to make a career while also living living where you want to be. Like how would you give advice to somebody wanting to move down that direction or create a life that you've created?
Yeah, I think it's to be as open as possible. So again, obviously, if I had a kid, if I had a wife, if I had certain responsibilities, I probably wouldn't be able to be in this position. So again, being as open and decentralized and not stuck in a system allows you to express this, where you can just go, fuck it, I'm going to be leaving and I can go there. So I think that's key as a young person, to not hold or put your chips all in a basket of one thing. I think it's about finding a job which has got a USP, where you have the ability to freestyle and pick up and go anywhere. So that could be a hairdresser, that could be a chef, that could be any sort of skill in that manner, which there's a demand for around the world. So, picking an education, and again, I didn't go to university. However, again, when I was younger, I was thinking, fuck, I didn't go uni. I'm going to be a bum. Again, that was me in a fear state back then. But again, look how that's turned out, where like I'm in Nicaragua and I've got a job, self-employed, and I've got a company and I can do this. Yet those people now are stuck, essentially. Not maybe always, but they're stuck into that job that university made them go down to. Where at the time I was a bit, okay, cool, I don't know, and it was a bit unknown territory for me. So again, I think there's a bit of luck mixed in. But again, it comes back down to being a bit more open about what's possible out there. Being brave, finding something that just you love, and time has there's no thing such as like I work every single day, basically. But again, when I say I work, it doesn't feel like work. It's not. It is work, but I do what I do every single day.
Yeah, I love that.
So again, it's just like even a personal trainer. You
So
could
just
be a
going
personal
for it.
trainer. Yeah, just you could be a personal trainer. Just being open when you're young, and then you can do these kind of things. So again, I would love to become a nutritional therapist when I was younger. It just didn't get placed in front of me, and wasn't in my sight at an early age. But I wish it was, because then maybe I'd be doing this before, or doing this earlier than I'm right now.
Well, you never know. You never know. Maybe this is exactly how it needed to happen. Maybe if you wanted it when you were younger, you might not have even done it later on. It's
yeah, exactly.
It's one of those funny things.
Yeah. So it is what it is, and I'm very grateful that I'm here right now, and it is what it is.
Yeah. Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, my man. I really appreciate it. It's
no worries.
It's been awesome to chat.
Well, where I am,
is there anything, any parting kind of?
Well, in the coffee shop where I am doing this recording, they're basically closing up, and they're like looking at me, wanting me to go. But I mean, here, so there's like a week of festival or parties here. So it's like an Easter holiday. So a lot of the Nicaragua party people come down to this area for parties. So it's kind of crazy here, but I mean, I live outside of town, 10-minute drive away. So as soon as I finish this call, I'm going home, having dinner, and then just chilling.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you again for your time. It was awesome to meet you, and yeah, we had a wide-ranging conversation, which was amazing. I'll if you're down in my way in Australia, near Melbourne, ever hit me up. Stay connected.
I don't think I'll be. Yeah, I don't think I'll be there anytime soon. But if you're in Central America, give me a shout.
Sounds good. Awesome. See you, man.
No worries.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.